One person from every family was abducted, all at the same time. It didn't matter if you were lying in bed sleeping, driving your car 60 miles per hour down the highway, or engaged in lovemaking. If you were the one from your family that was selected, you were sucked up into the sky. Just about everyone lost consciousness by 30,000 feet. How our bodies weren't destroyed from heat, cold, or radiation isn't entirely clear to me. But to be honest, I hadn't really worried about it. Out of everything that happened next, that was not too high up on my what the fuck list. One thing many people questioned at first was how or why they themselves were selected. I think the rules on this were pretty loose. You had to 1. Be at least 20 years old, and 2. Be the only one in your immediate family to go. So, if you had no surviving relatives, you went. Whether you were 20 or 120 years old. If you were married and had kids, it was going to be one of you who met the first criteria. If you were married without kids, it was you or your spouse. If you were single or in the dating scene, it was you, your parents, or one of your siblings who had not yet started their own family. It was 6 in the morning and I was sitting at my computer before my wife and our 2 kids were awake when everything started vibrating. The earth, the air, the water in my cup, the cup itself. Even my body was vibrating. I reached out and grabbed my desk to steady myself, but my hands passed right through it. Then I started to move straight up through the ceiling. I was under my bed, then passed through the bed. None of this hurt. My wife was laying on the bed. I moved right through her. Again, no pain, just a sense of warmth. She stirred in her sleep as I continued up and out the second-story ceiling into the sky. Looking down, I watched the snow-covered Colorado suburb below me get farther and farther away. I noticed the earth stopped vibrating when I was perhaps a mile up. I was not the only one on my way. There were thousands of us, just in my view. People were practically stacked on top of each other, coming out of a nearby apartment building. At first, when I was vibrating, I couldn't make a sound. Everything looked a bit like how I imagined the rapture until I was about 1,000 feet up, and everything stopped vibrating. I hadn't realized until that moment there had been no sound. With the vibrating and the chaos in my mind, it seemed like I had been screaming, as if my mind was projecting sound that wasn't there. But soon as everything stopped vibrating, the screams started. Panicked, absolutely horrified cries of the damned burst out all around me. For the record, I do believe in God, and I do not believe this was the rapture. Nor do I believe we were truly the damned. Hell, I don't even believe in hell. At about 14,000 feet, I noticed the temperature start to get cold, and the air was slightly harder to breathe. Then before I got to 30,000 feet, I passed out. I know I was below that altitude because one of the last things I saw was a jet flying above me. I remember thinking, if anyone departed from there, they must be nearly in space by now. And I was not wrong. When we wake up, a world is crashing down on us.
Hey you're finally awake.
My whole body feels a little crispy. Not exactly burnt, not painful, but like my skin might crack if I move too much. I rub my arms, then sit up, resting my back against the wall. My skin doesn't crack, and I feel blood moving in my veins, but it feels as if it's struggling to, like a train taking off uphill from a dead stop. It smells musty and earthy. I open my eyes slowly, expecting the light to hurt, but it's so dim, it doesn't take long for me to focus. My skin doesn't look crispy, nor does it look pale, suggesting my blood has been pumping just fine. There's also a chat box in the bottom left corner of my vision, just like you would have in an online game. Wherever I look, it moves too, instantly, as if it is attached directly to my eyeball. There is no lag time for it to catch up. It is simply there all the time. I have one message in the chat box.
Elliot, Hey you, you're finally awake.
I take in more of my surroundings. I am in a prison cell with old-timey bars and a handle next to a big keyhole. Outside the door is a red fox standing up like a man. He has a fox head, fur, and a tail, but his skeleton and muscle structure is more like a human's. Posture is not something I usually consider, but I can't help noticing his is impeccable. He's wearing tattered clothes and has a whip coiled at his hip that makes me think of Indiana Jones. Elliot, I suppose, is staring at me waiting for a reply. I'm not entirely sure that's accurate, I say, getting to my feet and walking to the bars.
Right. Well, it's good to see you can walk. Not everyone can right away, and we do not have much time. Still, take a moment to orient yourself. The user interface can be jarring at the beginning. First, look up, down, left, and right, in that order.
I hear him speak it, just as I would expect to with him standing a few feet away from me. But as he finishes the last word, the entire paragraph appears in my chat window, which catches my eye and causes me to look down. My name and previous statement is above his.
This happens sometimes. I wasn't told your race had inverted controls. Let me change that.
Wait, what? I begin as I peel my eyes away from the chat box, and I try to look up at him, but my eyes move downward, which causes me to sway forward, and I grab onto the bars. My controls. I begin again as a wave of frustration washes over me. I don't have controls, and I don't need my vision inverted.
Well, don't get testy with me. I'm your guide, and what am I to think when I tell you to look up and you look down? There, I've changed it back. What you looked at is probably your chat log. It's one feature of an intricate interface that will unlock for you as we progress, which we really need to be doing now.
Elliot shifts his weight, like he's getting ready to walk away. The questions I want to ask multiply every time he speaks, and it's difficult to prioritize them, so my mind settles for the last thing he said. This floor?
We'll talk about that more later. First, we need to get you out of this cell. I'm going to unlock your inventory, and in it you will find lockpicks. Use them on the door.
As Elliot's message appears in the chat box, a small image of a backpack appears at the top right of my vision. I notice it because it's new, but it could easily fade out of my peripheral if I was focused on something else. How do I open my inventory?
Do you see the bag on the top right of your screen? Look at it and just sort of will it to open. You can also enter B while your chat box is not selected to open it, but that will probably raise more questions, and like I said, we do not have a lot of time, big guy.
As if on cue, the stone walls around me groan and hairline fissures begin to form on the ceiling and back walls of the cell. I focus my attention on the backpack and feel desire for it to open, which it does, showing me a large, transparent grid that takes up most of my vision. At the top, there is an icon of some lockpicks. Next to them is a loaf of bread and canteen that has water written on it. Okay, now what?
Same thing as opening the backpack. Look at the lockpicks and will them out of there. If you had something in your hands, you would need to place it in the inventory first, but since you're unarmed, they will come right out.
It works. I now have lockpick tools between my hand and the bars I'm holding onto. They just kind of made their way in there, moving my hands back far enough that they didn't materialize inside of them. I don't know how to pick locks, I say as I insert the lockpick into the large keyhole, to try anyway. A small rock falls from the ceiling in the back and bounces along the floor, past my feet.
You know how to pick this one. Just give it a try. The lock has 2 pins. One goes all the way up, the other goes halfway up, and you turn it. You'll have to figure out which one is which.
A bigger rock falls now, crashing without a bounce. I try lifting the first pin halfway, and the back pin all the way up, and the lock turns halfway, then gets stuck. The cell is positively crumbling now. The back end of the cell, which is only 8 feet away, is beginning to have piles of rock. My frustration is replaced with a stronger sense of urgency. I try the reverse order, and it turns less than halfway. It's not working. There should be only 2 combinations, and neither worked.
Oh, it will work. You probably had the halfway one a little too high up or a little too low.
The hairline cracks form above my head. In my mind, I again hear him say, "Big guy, I'm not a big guy. I am of average height, at best, and slender. I'm a runner, and I might be able to squeeze through these bars. This cell was made for someone way bigger than me." I pull the lockpick out and try to slide through the bars. My foot hits something invisible and as solid as the stone walls around me.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Collision is in place.
Collision?
Dungeon rules. You must pick the lock.
Shards of stone ceiling begin to fall on me. Exasperated, I try again, careful to get the pin exactly halfway, then turn. It turns all the way this time. The door swings on its hinges, and I jump out as the bigger pieces start to fall where I was standing.
Excellent!
I notice a new message in my chat log. Lockpicking is now at 1. Elliot is not waiting for me. He continues forward to a wooden door. I'm glad to see this door swing right open for him. I follow him through, and we enter a hallway. It's a lot wider than the cell room we just left and extends 100 feet to a door that is identical to the one we just passed through. The walls are lined with torches, and there is a giant skeleton, probably the size the cell was intended for, halfway down the hallway, sitting slumped against the wall. There is a nest of rats in its ribcage.
Okay, this isn't so bad. I don't think that skeleton is undead, but those rats will attack us when we get near them. We cannot sneak past them, so be ready to fight. Do not let them bite you. They are almost definitely diseased.
How the hell am I supposed to fight a pack of rats without getting bit?
I don't know. Very carefully. I'll help you, but I have been significantly debuffed, so don't expect me to do all the work. Now that we have moved to the second room, we can party up.
He puts his hand in the air, as if he is going to high-five me. Uncertain, I clap his hand. You have joined Elliot's party. Appears in my chat log. Then 2 health bars appear on the left side of my interface. The doorway we came through has now begun crumbling behind us, and I grab the largest piece of rock on the floor. It probably weighs 20 pounds. Elliot and I move forward. When we are about 15 feet from the rats, one of the rats screeches loudly. 2 of them charge us while 2 run for the next door at the opposite end of the hall. 1 remains in the nest.
We're going to need to stop them. They will bring friends.
The first rat is almost halfway to us, and Elliot whips it right on its face. There is a loud crack that sounds more like electricity, perhaps a tiny bolt of lightning rather than what I would expect from a whip. The rat, which is nearly 2 feet long, freezes mid-step, and the word paralyzed floats above it. I heave my rock through the air. It lands right on top of the giant rat with a sickening crunch. You have gained experience. Appears in my chat log. Below my chat log is now a long bar that says EXP. There's a sliver of yellow on the left side of it. I race to the corpse of the rat for my rock, but the second rat beats me to it and hisses at me. Elliot comes up to my side and sends his whip out, but misses the rat, which jumps directly for my face. I let out a quick yelp as I roll forward. The rat goes over me, and Elliot takes another crack at it, missing again. I stop just in front of the dead rat and turn around. The attacking rat has already landed and is pouncing back toward me. I reach behind me for the rock, but get the dead rat's tail instead. The attacker is in the air, beelining it for my face. I grip the tail, pull it toward the flying rat in a hammer-like motion. The rock on top of it causes the rat to pull apart, and blood trails through the air until it makes a wet impact with the incoming rat. The words "You have received the bronze medal AF trophy" appear in front of me momentarily, then fade away. The attacker is now on the ground. Elliot quickly stomps on it, and I receive another "You gain experience" message. We move toward the skeleton and third rat while the hallway crumbles behind us. The two rats at the far end are struggling to open the door. One is repeatedly jumping against the door, while the other has his head tilted down and is pushing against it. As we approach, the third rat shuffles side to side as if it is hesitant to attack, then turns and flees down the hall toward the others. I pull on the femur of the giant skeleton, which after a little wiggling comes loose. We continue our approach to the remaining three rats. Two rats are throwing themselves against the door now, which is beginning to swing open an inch or two before closing again. At 20 feet away, I see all three of the rats stop, then back up and jump at the door in unison. The door opens wide and immediately explodes inward, sending splinters and rats in our direction. One rat, flailing wildly, comes right at me. Gripping the femur like a baseball bat, I swing at the rat and hit its center mass. I feel the shockwave from the explosion pass through me, but it doesn't cause me to lose my balance. I stare through the doorway, trying to see what is next. My ears are ringing and I see Elliot jumping up and down, waving his arms, trying to get my attention. I can't hear what he's saying, so I look at my chat log. You have become better at Detect Trap 1.
Go! Go! Go!
I feel the first small rocks fall on the back of my neck and down my shirt. They are small, but they hurt, and for the first time I see a tiny slice of my health is missing. It's probably from the explosion rather than the rocks, but I go. I sprint to the doorway, getting ahead of the collapse for a moment, where Elliot is already standing. On the other side of the door, the floor turns to a wooden rope bridge. To either side, and below the bridge is a long drop where I can see kobolds, part dog, part human, beasts, shooting arrows up at us. Whereas Elliot seems more human-like than fox-like, these seem more dog than human. Frantically running back and forth before pausing to take another poorly aimed shot at us. To the left of the bridge is a roaring waterfall, and one of the two ties that holds the bridge to our end of the cliff was damaged in the explosion, causing the bridge to tilt heavily to one side. The wood slats meant for walking on are wet and look slippery. With no time to spare, I put the femur bat into my inventory and step out onto the bridge, holding tight to another rope that runs at about waist height. An arrow zips between me and Elliot, who is still in the doorway. It hits the ceiling just inside, falls to the floor, and bounces back outside. You have gained experience. I look back to Elliot, who now has enough room to step onto the bridge as well. I see him laughing, almost hysterically, despite his ginger movement onto the bridge. You seem like you're in a pretty good mood, considering, I say, scrambling along the bridge to the next door.
Did you see that? That arrow fell back down and killed one of the kobolds.
Sure enough, there is one kobold laying on the ground with an arrow through its eye, deep into its skull. It doesn't seem like the arrow would have enough fall to penetrate the thing like that.
Magic arrows!
Of course, now that we are out in the middle of the bridge, the kobolds have taken up positions and are steadying their aim. I quicken my pace across the bridge, feeling exposed to what is now a flurry of arrows.
This part of the tutorial is supposed to teach you sneaking, but the rats detonating that trap really kind of messed that up.
Tutorial?
Yeah. I'll explain that once we get to your rest area.
An arrow tears through the last support rope, causing the bridge to fall toward the next door. I wrap the rope around my arm so that even if I lose my grip, my arm should be stuck in place long enough to regain my grip. We slam into the other wall below its door. I hit shoulder first, and pain shoots through me as the entire right side of my body smashes into the wall. Thankfully, my arm does hold me in place long enough to reposition my feet onto one of the wooden slats. My health bar dips to 3/4, but the pain quickly subsides. In my chat log, I see I took 8 points of damage. I look up for the first time and notice there is blue sky above me. But the arrows are bouncing off an invisible wall, just a few yards above the rope bridge. I look down and see Elliot has managed to hold on as well. So, I ascend the ladder to the next doorway. That whole rope bridge breaking and falling to the other side like that seems kind of cliché, don't you think? I say, once we're up and inside the next hallway.
It may have been scripted.
I notice the arrows have stopped ricocheting around us, so I risk a look back down at the kobolds. They have stopped firing and are crowding around the cliff wall below the door as the world collapses toward them. They have no way out of there. They must have just been spawned down there. I step further back into the new hallway and lose sight of them. This hallway is narrow and has long flat stones jutting out of the walls. Each one is 2 to 4 feet above and forward from the previous, leading up to a door far above us. No bad guys here. I think out loud.
This is the jump tutorial.
Jump. This place thinks I need to learn how to jump?
No, this place doesn't think at all. It does what it is programmed to do. This is part of the tutorial because while they try to match the gravity to your home planet, it is never exact. This is the end of the tutorial, but we need to get started. This room collapses quicker than you might expect it to.
Sure enough, the fissures have already started above and a little ahead of us. I easily step onto the first platform, but the next is a bit of a leap. Some of the next few are more than a bit, but I make it easily enough. I wonder what would happen if I fell. The first platforms have already been crushed by falling rubble. I suppose I would end up against the far wall, waiting to be crushed like the kobolds, if I didn't just die on impact. The last ledges that I have to jump to are definitely farther apart than I would be able to jump to on Earth. Either I'm stronger or the gravity is a little bit different here, but it feels close enough to what I'm used to that I'm confident I do not want to fall. I get a trophy notification when we go through this door. You have received a bronze tutorial complete trophy. I expect another hallway when I go through the door. Instead, it opens into a grassy field surrounded by dense pine trees. It's warm, breezy, and the sun is shining in a blue sky with a couple scattered clouds. What is this place? I ask, looking back at Elliot. The doorway we just came through is gone.
This is your rest area. Unless you mean in general, then it is the dungeon trials.
A dungeon trial. Right. Okay, I think it's time we talk about exactly what the fuck is going on here.